Hello and welcome to Brand X Reviews. This is the video that I've been waiting a long time to make, and that is my review of No Time to Die. Now, it's a two-part video. This first part is not going to have any major spoilers, so I'm just going to kind of talking thematically about it and what I liked, what I didn't like in terms of aspects and so on. So obviously it goes without saying this film's supposed to have come out beginning of last year, and even without the delay, there's been a lot of questions about this movie, the direction that they were going in, the plot of the film as well, obviously. I think as far as my memory goes back, obviously I'm only really old enough to remember sort of the Timothy Dalton ones from a very early age. It was more Pierce Brosnan as I was a kid growing up, and I was a big Bond fan back then, and I was following the news and so on about Bond films that were coming out at the time, and a lot of the rumours and so on turned out to be complete bollocks, and I can remember a lot of that. Back in the day, there was talk about Robin Williams, not Robin Williams, but that would have been just as good. Robbie Williams being James Bond. It was totally baseless, like completely baseless. And rumours like that persisted over the years. People remember it as if it was something that was a thing. But even that, that really is the one of the biggest bullshit rumours I can remember. But even that aside, this film, I think, has been the most speculated upon Bond film that I can remember anyway. So, and I'm a big Bond enthusiast as well. So even if I can't necessarily remember, knowing what I know about the history of the franchise, I think this one really has been the most speculated on. There's just been so much going on with it. But anyway, on to the film. I was not disappointed by this film at all. There was a lot of rumours and so on about wokery and bullshit that was going to be in this film with agendas and so on. I'm not going to get into that. I've talked a little bit about that. I might do a video in the future just for context about what that's all about. But you know what I mean anyway, and a lot of that was talked about, and it wasn't baseless. There were real reasons to believe that there was going to be a lot of that in this. I can confirm, as somebody that has a very low threshold for tolerance of that kind of thing in movies, this film barely any hint of it at all. Seriously, if you're concerned about that, there's none of it really. It would be a stretch. I could look for things and say, well, not at all. Seriously. I don't know whether or not edits were made to this film. I kind of suspect there were, because there were a few scenes, and I'm going to talk about that in the spoiler review after this. But I think that there were possibly some bits, some cuts and just edits and alternate reshoots possibly that were done specifically to take out some of that woke agenda that was kind of infecting this movie up till that point, maybe because there was a big backlash at the time when the movie was in production. So, like I say, if you're concerned about that, don't be. Take it from me, somebody who has dedicated a lot of my own time to kind of researching and trying to do what I can do with regards to saying no to this whole woke thing, whether it's in entertainment or just in general in life, everyday experiences. When I'm saying that this film doesn't have any of that in, you can pretty much take that as solid. It was kind of interesting because there was a lot of talk about that, and I did a video about it as well in the last few weeks on the channel, voicing my concerns about it. But there were a few people, Andy Signor at Popcorn Planet, and also there was an interview with Britt Ekland, the Bond girl, on GB News, and they both said there's none of the wokeness in this. So that to me made me think, well, if they're saying that and they were very specific, it was fine for me to trust that. So I won't harp on too much about that anyway, you get the picture. So, obviously there was the song as well. There was a lot of mixed reviews of this song by Billie Eilish when that came out. Was it February last year? I seem to remember it's February 2020. Now, obviously this is the single on LP. This came out last year. They didn't get time to release this before the original release. Well, not the original, that was 2019 originally. But when it was scheduled to come out, and they pulled the plug at the last minute back in, was it late winter, early spring last year? This didn't come out in time for that, but the song did. It was out there, and a lot of people were asking, "How's this film?" Because I mean, how's a song going to fit in with the film, basically? Because a song is a song, but when it's actually presented to you in the context of the movie, because this isn't just any song, obviously it's a movie tie-in, how does it work? It works quite well. This film, it's got a lot of emotions in it that I don't think we've really had. We've had some like emotional scenes in movies, and there's been quite a few emotional story arcs with Daniel Craig's character as Bond in the films, but they haven't carried the films quite as heavily as it does in this film. And I haven't seen anything like that since On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I believe it was done very well in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and I'd say the same about this film. I think that if you're going to go in that direction, they did it well. So it's not something I'm particularly a fan of in Bond movies. I prefer if he was just a kind of womanizing misogynist, but in a good way, in a way that women love. I mean, they have sex with him, so you know, it's not like he's the rapist that they've tried to like frame him as. I won't go down that route, but I tend to prefer that character than the kind of soppy thing where he's saying "I love you" to women and stuff. But you know, like I said, that's the direction that they went in, and they handled it well to say that they went in that direction. So this song does tie in with that. There's a few music cues in this. I think I was aware that it was Hans Zimmer. Yeah, I mean on the actual the single it says orchestral arrangement Hans Zimmer. Obviously Hans Zimmer did the score as well. That's another factor that I like when an actual Bond theme, the song, pops up during the film as part of the score. Not all films do that, and they kind of took it away for a lot of years, especially the Pierce Brosnan ones. I think the only Pierce Brosnan one that I can remember, I know the song, the Madonna song, was in the film. I seem to remember the Garbage one. The World Is Not Enough might have appeared like throughout the film, but it's not something they've done a lot of the time. But anyway, in my because it was an older thing. They used to do in Bond soundtracks. They used to be quite proud of the song itself and incorporate it into the score, and it was a very frequently done thing. But like I say, in the sort of 90s ones and some of the Daniel, not all of them, but some of the Daniel Craig ones, they kind of didn't tie them in. But I think when you've got the same person doing the actual movie score as well as the song, having some input on the song anyway, there's that opportunity there to kind of bring it in. And they do that in this as well, quite a few moments. And it works well. So to answer the question, how does this song work with the movie? It fits very well in context of the direction they went with the movie. So if you don't like the song, you're probably not going to like the direction of the movie, and vice versa. If you don't like the direction of the movie, you're not going to like the song. Probably because you're more of a fan of the colder James Bond who just sleeps with women. I mean, to be honest, I'm more of a fan of that. But I do, when it's done well, I don't mind it when it's done the other way. So, and it was done well here. So I feel like I've kind of made my point there. So the score itself, very interesting. This is the most interesting Bond score that I've heard in a long time. But in some ways, it's a bit of a disappointment. I'll explain what I mean. I haven't actually played this yet, but I got this yesterday. Again, obviously the movie itself got delayed. The release of this did as well. I'd had this pre-ordered since early 2020 because it was going to come out when the film came out. I usually buy the CDs as well because I've got all the CDs of the Bond soundtracks. I've got all the records of all the ones that you can actually get anyway of the Bond soundtracks. So I got this. I haven't played it yet, but obviously I've seen the film. I've only just watched the film. I didn't want to listen to the score before having seen the film. It's Hans Zimmer score. Now the question was, is it going to be generic Hans Zimmer? And I would say yes, and kind of in a good way, kind of in a bad way. In a good way because a generic Hans Zimmer score is still a very good Hans Zimmer score, but it maybe doesn't have the Bond theme in it as much as we would have liked. But we've seen all that done before. There's only certain ways you can play that music over action scenes or whatever. But really interesting to this, they brought back On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the theme, just in a few bits, and it was kind of relevant because this is Daniel Craig's equivalent of the On Her Majesty's Secret Service story that they did with George Lazenby. And I tend to find the people that don't like that film, and I totally get it, they aren't the hardcore Bond fans. The ones that do like that film tend to be the hardcore Bond fans. Not just that they like it, but that's usually up there as one of their favourites, which must drive a lot of people crazy, because a lot of people just think that's an awful movie. It's terrible. How can you like it? It's like, not only do we like it, it's one of our favourites as a Bond fan. So as a Bond fan, to see the On Her Majesty's Secret Service theme brought back into the soundtrack, actually in the movie, it kind of pops up randomly as well. There's a scene where Bond and M are talking. I won't go too much because this is non-spoilers. But yeah, there's a scene where they just kind of bring in the theme, and it works really well. And it was good to hear that theme 50 years after it was last used in a Bond movie. So yeah, so there was that, and they do kind of bring back, I'm not going to spoil it by saying how, but the Louis Armstrong We Have All the Time in the World, it's kind of incorporated in here as well. So I'm going to do a review of the record anyway after I've played the thing. I mean, I could do like a review of the art or whatever on there, but I want to play it first, just in case there's anything else. But that's the soundtrack, and I've talked about that. I mean, this whole video I could talk for ages just about like one aspect of the film. I'm going to try to blitz through it. So obviously the plot of the movie, again, without getting too heavy into spoilers, there's a lot of stuff that we knew already. It was to do with some kind of bioweapon, which again I think maybe tied in with the reason why they wanted to delay this movie. Obviously, I mean, there was the obvious thing about social distancing and all that stuff last year, cinemas being a no-go, and they wanted to maximise revenue for the film. That makes sense, not because they're greedy, but this film has to make a lot of money to break even. Well, it does now because they've like marketed it 3 times. But even before that, this film had to make a lot of money. They knew people were going to be going to cinemas because of everything that was kicking off early last year, so they pulled it. But I think maybe there was another motive here as well, because the plot of the movie was to do with an apocalyptic type virus, basically, which a lot of people were worried about last year. Obviously, it turned out to be unfounded. It was actually the government, the global government response to the virus, I think, that's caused more damage long term. Obviously, if you don't just look at body count, but everything else at face value, anyway. I'm not going to go down that road, but obviously that was a concern at the time. So the plot of this film really wouldn't have gone well with a lot of people. They would have said it was insensitive, understandably. So I think that was another maybe reason why they pulled it. I hadn't really thought about that at the time, but yeah, I think that is legitimate. So that's one of the major plots of this. There were a lot of callbacks to early Bond as well. A lot of visuals that kind of, I mean, do I want to go in this direction? Yeah. To you Bond fans out there, you'll know what I'm talking about, but I'll spell it out for you. Basically, there was a guy back in the early days of the Bond films called Ken Adams, or was it Adam? Yeah, Adams, I think, Ken Adams. And he did a lot of the designs for the sets, these big giant sets. I think he started on the first one, Dr. No, from memory. So if you kind of think back to the early Bond films where you had these gigantic set pieces and the way it was filmed and lit and everything about it, you can just visualize it. There's a lot of callbacks to that kind of look in this. I mean, they've always kind of maintained it a little bit, but this was a heavy callback to the looks of what Ken Adams did in those early Bond films. So that was really nice to see in this as well. A lot of this was reminding me of the film Dr. No as well. A lot of aspects to it as well. There's a bit at the end where there's like the villain's lair. He's on an island, a lot like in Dr. No. A lot of people speculated whether or not the Rami Malek character, the big Bond villain of this, was going to be Dr. No. I'm not going to say whether he is or he isn't, but either way, there's plenty in there to make you think that would be the case. I won't give any hint going there, because like I said, there's either going to be a spoiler or not if I say too much. So I think I might cut it short, to be honest. I mean, you get the picture. I really like the film. Somebody asked me, out of 10, what I would rate this film. Well, I'm biased because I like all Bond films to an insane extent, and I can't give an objective review in terms of 10 out of 10, because I would just say to every Bond film ever made 10 out of 10. I would just do that. So if you want to know from that point of view, I would give this film 10 out of 10, but don't trust that. On a scale, because obviously that's comparing it to every other film ever made, on a Bond scale, so obviously 10 being like Goldfinger and Skyfall and On Her Majesty's Secret Service and GoldenEye, that will be top tier Bond for me, like 10 out of 10 for those. I'd maybe give this an 8 or a 9. I mean, this is a high standard to be at, so don't take that as a bad. I mean, it's still a high score anyway. But I'd maybe put this on a par with Spectre and Quantum of Solace. I think Daniel Craig's best ones were Casino Royale and Skyfall. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Not everybody, but I think a lot of people would. Spectre and Quantum of Solace maybe weren't quite as good. I would put this on a par with them. So maybe an 8 or a 9 out of 10 for this one. But there's a lot in here that a lot of you will like. I haven't really heard much bad said about this film. I can maybe get into some of that in the spoilers. It's not terribly long a film. I think it was like 2.5 hours long, something like that. Maybe a little bit longer, but it didn't drag to me. I wasn't sort of looking at my watch, waiting for it to end. I really enjoyed it. And I know I'm biased because I'm a big Bond fan, but there you go. Right, I'll leave it there. I'm going to do another video talking about spoilers. So see you in the next video.